Hi, my name is Sam Shelley from Head Trash Anonymous. I also have a site, don'tdwell.org, but you can find my Head Trash Anonymous group on Facebook. No, and what I was going to do tonight is doing a reading from my book from the first chapter, an unabridged version, if you will. And my book, I don't dwell enough, you can see this, how well you can see with the glare or not, but you can get a free copy of this book through my Head Trash Anonymous group. And under the files, you can download a copy there. And just hopefully this book will help you. I don't dwell, how I use meditation, mindfulness, and yoga to reverse my incurable diseases. Hopefully that doesn't turn you off in a way. Thinking about using meditation, mindfulness, yoga. But my practice was very simple, just 5 minutes a day. So I had all these diseases, all these issues, and I didn't know a way out. So in my first chapter here, growing up, I talk about all my difficulties. And I start the book with my car accident, of how I was hit by a van when I was 6 years old that caused a head trauma, broken elbow, broken hip, all of these cuts and bruises over my body. I nearly bled out. But what I didn't share in my book was my near-death experience. I didn't want people to see, oh, he had a near-death experience, he's different, he's special, I can never do this. But not near-death experience wasn't part of my experience growing up. It was very suppressed. Because what my mom said to me when I woke up from that near-death experience, it wasn't part of her reality, so it didn't become part of my reality. But I think the book would have been a lot different if I started out this way. This would be the alternate beginning to chapter 1. Probably how I would write it today, and the book would probably be a lot smaller. Because I really think this book is really good for where I was at that time, that I wasn't very spiritual, I wasn't very religious. So this was basically the ground floor, if you will. But six years later, I probably would have done it differently. Like if I started the book like this, I remember being placed back into my body and waking up and seeing this bright light with 3 beings on each side of me, removing my life support. So realize at this time, these beings removed my life support. I just got out of surgery, got hit by a van, but I was too young to know the lessons at that time. But what my mom said to me in the morning is, why'd you remove your tubes, your life support? She didn't step back and say, hey, wait a minute, this boy, this 6-year-old boy, he's all scraped up, all these casts on, all these bandages. How could he possibly remove his tubes? So when she said that to me, I was like, Mom must be right. I had to do this. So that memory got suppressed, if you will, that near-death experience. And it wasn't a memory because it actually did happen. My life support was removed and I stayed alive, despite the doctor saying I only have 50% chance of survival from that accident. So what this accident did to me that they didn't know at that time, because their knowledge of the brain was very limited in the 70s. But that brain injury, if you will, was probably one of the catalysts for the bipolar disorder. And I talk about in this book how I was like extremely shy, afraid of people, just really afraid of the world, scared of people. But that was my world for a long time, that I was just scared of society, a lot of anxiety. I suffered an awful lot of anxiety. And I share in the book, how difficult school was to me and things like that. But one thing in here that was kind of interesting in this book, I didn't really put a lot of stuff in the book because I really want to, there's a lot of stuff I didn't put in the book because I didn't want people to be offended per se. Because I see that, people are very attached to their beliefs, the opinions, the judgments, their head trash, if you will. That's really limiting them, blocking them in some way. So I talk about this in page 7, the whole idea of God, Jesus, and the church's tenets seemed foreign to me and caused a lot of confusion. as to why some people attended church and some people did not attend church. Because what I saw, that people were doing, they were going to church, but they didn't see any better or any different than me. They seemed just like me. I thought like Jesus always taught love, but I saw these people going to church that didn't have love. And I remember this incident that I didn't share in a book. I think it was like in a church parking lot or something like this. I saw this father and son fighting. I mean, literally throwing punches at each other. And that was really odd, confusing. I thought Jesus taught love. Here we are in a church parking lot or very near the church. I forget exactly where it was, but I know they were in church. It was just really odd to see this family throwing punches at each other. And they're Christian? Don't they follow Jesus's tenets of love one another? It just seemed very odd. And I didn't share that in the book, but it was just a very odd experience that sort of pushed me away from religion, if you will. Because here's this great teacher, Jesus, teaching love, and these people were not experiencing love. And I saw people that went to church on Sunday, and they were just miserable on a Monday. And it just seemed odd to me, just a very, very odd experience. So I talk about that a little bit, talking about that I didn't really care for school. I didn't really keep jobs for very long. I was just in this wild, undiagnosed bipolar state. Then when I was in this midst of this crazy spell, my doctor, Lazo July, he said, hey, 12 Monkeys is coming to town, and Brad Pitt wants to interview some people on how to play a person that's a little bit, has some issues. Doctor didn't say crazy people, but that's what he's implying. And you can see his name in the credit. You don't see the patient's name because of HIPAA or whatever these laws are. But my doctor's in there, Dr. Laszlo July, in the credits. And so my bipolar was very, very bad. I tried to kill myself twice, that I talked about in the first chapter. I remember writing the note. I remember putting out the bottle of Ambien. I remember, getting the water and all that, writing the note. All that was done. But then I just had this moment of insight, if you will, to call my wife that I needed help. So I reached out to her and got placed into the hospital so I didn't kill myself. I went through that twice. And my doctor was the best doctor in the city of Philadelphia for bipolar. He was world renowned. He was always rated the best bipolar doctor in Philadelphia. Well, I was a rapid cycler bipolar. That means I go from really sad to really happy in a short amount of time. And for me, that was about 3 or 4 times a day. I go really low to really high, like a godlike persona, if you will. So it took my doctor 5 years to get the medicine correct, if you will, where I was stable, where I wasn't flying off the handle or so depressed that I wanted to kill myself. So that's basically the first chapter, just being an undiagnosed bipolar and going through all those issues of being hit with the car, the anxiety, all those type of issues. Then the next chapter, was life's curveball, if you will. So after 5 years of getting the medicine stabilized, then I went about a decade. Then at age 37, I had the worst migraine of my life. The absolute worst migraine. I knew something was wrong. So I called my doctor. He thought it was just a bad migraine, gave me some strong painkillers. What I remember reading here in the book was my wife was concerned. They took me to the ER to have me checked for a stroke because I was exhibiting some stroke-like symptoms. With the severe pain, I was having some neurological issues. So that was on a Friday. By the time Monday came, my walking was really starting to be impeded. I was really starting to have some serious issues. So the doctor ordered an MRI, and by Wednesday I was in the hospital unable to walk. So they tested me for anything and everything in the hospital, trying to figure out what I didn't have, because MS was a process of exclusion. So they did a bunch of MRIs on me, the head, the spine, because the multiple sclerosis is a disease of the brain and spinal column. So I didn't have any lesions on my spine, but if you look at my MRI, it looked like Swiss cheese. I had numerous lesions on the brain, basically, which was the white matter of the brain being stripped away from the nerves, so the body was short-circuiting itself. A very bad disease. It's the #1 cause of disability amongst young adults. So I was talking about the multiple sclerosis in chapter 2, about the rehab that I have from that, like relearning. So I had to relearn to walk. So at age 6, I had to relearn to walk there. Then at age 37, I had to relearn to walk again. And that was quite the challenge. I remember going from a wheelchair to a walker. Then eventually I got myself into a quad cane that I used for a while. Then just a regular cane. So that was my life. And then I was dealing with these migraines, psoriasis in about 1/3 of my body. Then just these migraines, these really chronic migraines that I would have. So that would send me to the ER like 2-3 times a month. That was before they really had anything to treat migraines. This is before Imitrex. I remember when Imitrex first came out, I had to give myself an intramuscular injection in the thigh. It was not a very pleasant experience, but it would take care of the migraine most of the time. So when it didn't take care of the migraine, into the ER to get me some medicine. But before ER, I would just take barbiturates and all sorts of things they would give you at that time in the 70s and early 80s before Imitrex. Let me see what else I talked about here. And chapter 3 was the chapter exploration. I think this really sums it up. We never know how our experiences will shape our future. I never imagined that the following story would result in radical changes. I was fascinated with ghost stories and the paranormal, subjects that I could not explain or fully believe. Now that's the thing is, I had so I watched a lot of TV. This is around 2010, I want to say, 2010. That I was fascinated with like ghost shows and the paranormal, but it was TV. I didn't know if it was real or fake. So sometimes we're afraid to have experiences, but sometimes we just need to have these experiences. So I encourage you to do something out of your comfort zone. Now for me, it wasn't out of my comfort zone, it was just more of a curiosity, like ghost hunting. So for some people say, oh, ghost hunting, that's not real, and they would never go. But perhaps if they went to ghost hunting and they had an experience they couldn't explain, maybe they'll spark a little bit of curiosity into them to explore. Or you see a thing for a UFO hunt, or a Bigfoot hunting, or whatever it may be. Just to go try that new experience, because you just never know. You may have an experience that will open you up, if you will, to see something that you cannot explain. Seeing something that I could not explain really opened me up. So I saw this tweet from Chris Williams from Ghost Hunters. She's saying, hey, we're having this event at Fort Mifflin in Philadelphia. That's by the airport. It was about an hour drive from my house. And at that time, an hour is about my limit of driving. So I got a hotel down there. So it's okay, I'll go to this event for 1 hour, then I'll stay overnight, then drive back the next day. Because I had to have my cooling vest, I had to have all sorts of equipment, if you will, to deal with these multiple sclerosis that I had. So I went on this ghost hunt. Well, I did my research first on Fort Mifflin, and I saw that the casemates were the most active areas. So I planted myself in the casemate. So about a half hour, maybe 15 minutes, I don't know, I was quite bored. Chris Williams was pretty much doing like an EVP session, so nothing was really happening. Then one of the attendees put out a flashlight, one of the kind of flashlights that twist on, twist off. So she put this out about like 10 feet in front of her, maybe 15, I'm not really quite sure. Then she would say, turn this flashlight on. It would go on. Turn this flashlight off, and it would go off. I was like, that's interesting. What's going on there? So I put out my flashlight, and I'd also want on and off by command. So like, that's really odd. So then I couldn't explain it. I just felt this sense of dread once in a while. And it got really bad. Because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the casemates or not. But there's like these these beds, if you will, these benches where people slept. And I'll do the original beds or reproductions, or probably reproductions at this time. I imagine beds from the Civil War wouldn't be there anymore, but I'm not sure. But anyway, I sat on this bed, and it felt like somebody I couldn't see sat right next to me. And when they sat right next to me, I just felt this overwhelming sense of dread when they sat there. And I could just reach over, and there was nobody there. It was just very, very odd. So after I got home from that experience, I started to read some books. No, but I read very slowly because multiple sclerosis, my eyes were very poor. When I was diagnosed with MS that I share in the second chapter is, the one eye was jumping around, the other eye was blurry. So my vision never recovered fully from that at that time. So I could read a couple pages, any more than a couple pages, it would just really shoot into this migraine. So I was a very slow reader. And I guess maybe 7, 8 months later, I finally read a book that talked about meditation. Meditation brings inner peace. And that's what really got me when I talked about reading a few pages of meditation was the benefit of inner peace. I'm like, I need that. I need inner peace. This mind is going crazy. And this mind is filled with all this garbage, all this head trash, if you will. All these worries, all this stress, all the make-believe fear was strictly in my head. But I didn't know that it was head trash. I didn't realize that I had these thoughts, but I wasn't these thoughts. It wasn't until I started meditation practice that I saw, wait a second, I have these thoughts, but I am not these thoughts. Because when I was a bipolar in my 20s, when I heard a voice say, life is too painful, go kill yourself, I would go try to kill myself. Because that voice can be very destructive. So a lot of people are killing themselves because of the head trash. And that's one of my missions for Head Trash Anonymous is for suicide prevention. That people are killing themselves unnecessarily. You were born for a reason. Please see that your life is not a waste, that you matter, you make a difference. Just smiling at someone will make a difference. Say, hey, how are you? How was your day? And really listening intently to them and acknowledging their existence. If we just acknowledge someone's existence, it will make a difference in their life. It really will. So I was going through this exploration of meditation, and my practice was very simple. I see in the book, I would just close my eyes and focus on my breath. But the real practice that I think I was doing that I didn't include in the book was because the breath was too subtle for me to read at times. It was more like feeling my feet on the ground or feeling my hands on my lap. So I would just sit here, usually with eyes closed. And if the storyteller comes, I don't judge it. I just feel my feet back on the floor or my hands on the lap. So just sitting here, feel your feet on the ground. Feel your hands touching your legs. And when you're here in this moment fully, that's meditation. Meditation is simply that simple. Then what I would do after my meditation is I would journal. And people were saying, oh, that's just ego dumping. Excuse me. That was just ego dumping. You just want to do a thought dump, if you will. And don't bother reading it again. But I should have read it again. There was some really profound wisdom that came through when I share this in Appendix A. I think it's Appendix A. Yeah, Addendum A. I share some of these things I wrote down when I was first journaling. You got to remember, I was not a spiritual person, a religious person. So within the first few months, I would write stuff, take a breath and exhale. There's nothing that is too difficult to overcome. Your soul will know the answer since it is always connected to source. However, the ego will try to get in the way and prevent the truth from coming through. And that's what I want people to see is when you clear the head trash today, the truth comes through. And this was way beyond me at this time. But this is what I learned just by writing after meditation. I just put pen to paper. So if I meditate for 5 minutes, I have my pen on paper for 5 minutes. And I would just write whatever came to me and wouldn't filter. I would just write stuff. But people say that's just ego dumping, don't read it. So when I read my journals, when I came to write my book, it was like, wow, if I paid attention, the journey would have been a lot quicker. So that's why I teach people in journaling today is write your thoughts down afterwards, then just skim through it and see if there's anything in there that you would not say. That is your perfect spirit, if you will. Because that's what ultimately shifted me, was hearing a voice, a perfect spirit, and realizing that's it. My spirit is fine. It's simply the body that's damaged. So when I had that realization, I had a knowing that all was well and all fear of my health was simply gone. I knew it was over. Then I was just getting this profound wisdom, like your soul will know the answer. And your soul really does know the answer if you can get this quiet. And the way I got that quiet was keeping myself present for 5 minutes a day. That's how I began. Then 5 minutes, twice a day by the second month. And by the third month, I increased the time a little bit to about 10 minutes twice a day. But I said in the book like 15 to 20 minutes. But I think that was probably by the fourth month. I don't think I graduated that quickly. Although it could have been 15 minutes twice a day by the end of the third month. Because I was sort of an overachiever, I guess you could say. That I was doing 10 minutes twice a day. And I guess it was, the mind was quieting down very quick. Especially when I heard the voice, perfect spirit, then the mind just went pretty much silent. Like most of the head trash was gone that night. So I just share this wisdom here. Even if you just download the book and read Addendum A, it would really help you. You know, the mind is not the true essence of self. It is a place for the ego to hide. So think about that. The mind is not the true essence of self. It is a place for the ego to hide. Where in the world did that come from? That's channeling, if you will. Channeling is the voice within us, if you will. Because as Eckhart Tolle says, that from stillness the wisdom arises. So I think it's pretty funny if you watch Eckhart Tolle, he'll get a question from the audience, he'll read that piece of paper. Why am I having this bad relationship? Or why cannot I find a job? Something, and he'll be like, I don't know. And he'll just get quiet. The next minute later, he's just talking for 10 minutes on that subject. That he doesn't know from his mind. He knows from his soul that's connected to the universal consciousness. That's very, very deep. So my practice today is I simplify things quite a bit. And you can find more about me on Head Trash Anonymous. And this is basically the first 3 chapters was the bipolar, the multiple sclerosis, then my state of exploration of being curious, starting a simple meditation practice, just 5 minutes a day, that I deserve time to myself, because you do, because you're here for a reason. You're not a mistake. It's quite a miracle that you were born. You're here, you're watching this. So that was the first 3 chapters, meditation, then writing after that. So I began a journaling practice probably about 2 weeks after I began meditation. I started meditating, like I said, about 8 months after that ghost hunt. So probably, early spring 2011. And by summer 2011, I heard that voice and that big shift, that quantum moment that Wayne Dyer talks about. But my name is Sam Shelley. My friends call me Sam the Miracle Man. You can find me on Facebook at Head Trash Anonymous on my page. Or you can find me on my website, don'tdwell.org. Eventually, I have the domain names for Head Trash Anonymous, but the websites aren't built yet. So you can find all my stuff at Don't Dwell. And that's the summary of the first 3 chapters. Next week, I'll talk about the 4th and 5th chapter. And what do they talk about? Like, I wrote this book in 2013, and most of this book is channeled. So I don't remember a lot about what I wrote, because it was like I was just in that state. So let's see. Chapter 4 is all is well. I'll give you a little bit of that tonight, hearing that voice say perfect spirit. And then chapter 5 was recovery. Learning to trust that intuition, that insight, if you will. And if I was reading my journaling, it would have probably sped things up because my soul was trying to communicate with me. When the mind was quiet, I couldn't quite hear that voice within. So it was coming through me in writing. And that's why Spirit will communicate with you whatever works for you. It can be through an image, through a picture. It can be a knowing. It can be the voice. It can be through writing. It can be through anything. Well, that's all for tonight. I will be back next week with chapter 4 and 5. Hope to see you around. Take care.